All right, you want to get started?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Well, first of all, let me thank you all for agreeing to participate in what I think will be a very important benefit to the city in many, many years to come. I gave you a little packet that gives you the history of it, so we don't have to review and where the money came from and what we have now. We'll take a look at the financials a little bit later. But this is our initial meeting, so what I thought I'd do is to just have, I think, does everybody know everybody else on the committee? Usually, it's the case. So I think everybody knows everybody, so we don't have to go around the room and do that. But the first order of business for any committee is to elect a chair. So what I thought we'd do is we'd elect a chair. The easiest thing to do is everybody have a piece of paper. If they don't, maybe write a name down and send it in and send it that way. You want to be the chair? Oh.
No. There has to be.
Oh, yeah, hey, there's, that's true, the airport.
No, I'm not volunteering.
Good host.
The term predetermined.
Write names down there, send them over to Jennifer, and we'll see if we can get a majority in favor of one, and if that's the case, then I'll turn the meeting over to the chair, and we can work our way down the agenda.
Has this been predetermined, Carl, or just the Carl?
And it's been voting multiple times.
Put him over here.
You vote for yourself.
Good, sir.
I understand the double L's now.
Yeah.
I'll say there are refreshments on the table over there. Help yourselves, drinks and anything else you'd like. Coffees over there as well.
We have a tie.
You have a tie?
We have 2 for Mr. Martin and 2 for Mr. Montgomery.
Okay, so everybody vote for one of those two. Do it again, and we'll vote for one of those two.
I'll make that real easy.
Sergeant at Arms. I told you it was a dangerous place to get that in the beginning.
You did that to yourself.
No, I didn't. The lady here did it too. My son works out here.
Yeah?
She said I set the gavel by you.
Mr. Montgomery, you are now the chair.
There we go.
What have I done?
There we go.
You picked the right seat.
Everybody has on their, in front of them, they have a copy of the packet that was sent to you earlier. But there's also an agenda on that, so we can work our way down the agenda. It generally follows this. I think I condensed a couple on the final agenda. But we're here staff's here to answer any questions, any thoughts you have, and to really work through the initiating the committees and getting it off the ground and running. We'll talk about timelines in a little bit. Mr. Chairman, if you want to call the next order of business.
I guess we need to appoint a secretary.
Appoint a secretary. What the Board of Trustees did, the secretary doesn't have to be a member of the committee. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Generally, they aren't because it takes up so much time. You lose track of what's going on. So a lot of times we have appointed someone off of a committee to be a secretary. The board appointed Ms. Brown because she's a city recorder and is here and takes excellent notes and takes everything up. So we'll take nominations. That's just a suggestion, open for any nominations, and we'll just take a vote of the committee.
Chairman, I recommend Ms. Brown.
I second.
If she will take it.
Anyone else? Take a vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Congratulations.
All right.
Okay. The trust agreement, what are we going to review on that? Just,
Yeah, Mr. Tucker, who you may know, is a city attorney, and we thought we'd take a few minutes and have him go through what the trust agreement says as far as the role of the committee.
Just do a quick overview. So the trust, the investment trust, was established by the city council pursuant to this trust agreement with the board of trustees. The first step to get to that point, though, was an amendment to the city charter that authorized the city to create that trust, and that the corpus of that trust was to be funded with not all, but a significant portion of the proceeds from the sale of the Murfreesboro Electric Department back in 2020. And so the trust agreement governs the management of the trust assets and how the trust assets are distributed. The way those assets are to be distributed is that 5% of the trust assets will be distributed every year, less expenses, administrative expenses. 85% of the distributions will come back to the city, but 15% of that 5% distribution will be distributed to qualified beneficiaries, which are charitable entities operating within the city of Murfreesboro. And it is the role of this committee to set up the processes for accepting applications from charities and foundations within the community to apply for funds, and then for this committee to evaluate those and make recommendations of who should be the beneficiaries of that 15% in any given year. So that's an annual process that will take place probably about this time every year. I'm not going to do it this year, so we're looking at 2024 doing it, but it's the set of recommendations would come from this committee to the board of trustees in the winter, early spring of each year. The specific responsibilities and authority of the Committee on Contributions is set forth in the trust agreement, which is A10 of the agreement. If you go to, I think it's the attachment 2. Oh wait, I'm looking at a different document. Is it the same? Yes. Is it A10?
There's an 18.
Yeah. There is? So it would be there, section 8 of the trust agreement. Those are the responsibilities of the committee. And also if you look at page A14, the trust distributions, 11C says the board is authorized to distribute 15% of the annual distribution as charitable contributions to qualified beneficiaries to be used for charitable purposes as recommended by the Committee on Contributions. That's you. And if you look at D, the charitable contributions will be allocated such that a qualified beneficiary receives not more than 25% of the total distributions for charitable contributions in a given year. And then we've broken it out further that that certain causes should not receive more than specific percentages. So education and services can't receive more than 20%, the end-use services can't receive more than 20%, community safety and victim services more than 15%, health-related services not more than 10%. So that's kind of the general framework within it which you're operating. And each year there'll be the 5% is based on the total value of the trust assets as of the end of the previous year, so December 31st. And so the 5% will be calculated off of that, and then 15% of that 5%. Lyle, did you have a question?
So our first order of business is to figure out the recommendation for distribution of $278,963 by February 15th of next year, right?
Well, that's a projection, right?
That's a projection.
Yeah, so something along those, so the projections that you see in the back are based on some assumptions, and it assumes an investment yield over a period of time. So it'll be somewhere around that number, but not exactly that, because we don't know how much it's going to earn.
Sure. So then how do we operate? Do we say distribute, get a 100% and distribute 10%, 12% then, or since we don't know the number?
Right, you don't know the number as of yet. So what we'll have to do is to take the applications in for grants, and how much they want. We'll have an approximation of what the number is going to be. They won't get the final number on the grant until after the first of the year. So the board will take it on December the 31st. They'll get a value of the trust, and then they'll do their math for their distributions. And so that number, we won't know until January. So the committee will do its work to take applications, and in January make the award based on what's calculated, make the recommendation to the board on the 15th. And the board will take that, submit it to council, who has a veto on any particular contributions if they want to exercise that. And if they don't, it comes back to the board, and the board makes distributions during the year, depending on what it's being distributed for. It may not be all at one time. It may be a series of distributions during the year.
Deal. So we'll have a much sharper number in January.
Yeah, we'll know in January what the math is. Yeah. You'll have a preliminary number going into it, because we'll know what the valuation is. We'll watch the valuation of the corpus as we get closer to that date. So you'll have a general number.
And city staff will be, and we may get to this later, you don't have to come up with the application process yourself. You probably will review it and vet it, but that's something that city staff is prepared to help this committee with.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Later
that
on.
in a little bit. We have some experienced staff people over there, applications for grants, and we can talk to them. One of the good things too is that on the Board of Trustees, Ann Davis serves on the Board of Trustees, who runs the Christy Houston Foundation. So she provides a lot of insight, has already given us a lot of insight on how that board runs and how that organization makes its grant contribution or grant applications, how they handle them. So it's pretty valuable knowledge. So we'll probably turn to Ann for a little bit to gather information for you guys to work with.
Yeah. Question on the power of the city council veto. We put a lot of work into whatever it is we're doing. We come up with the end result, submit that. Will there have to be a legitimate reason for the city council can one council person veto our work?
Now,
How's that going to work?
the council only acts as a group, so they would have to be, a majority of council would have to say, no, that's not something that we want to do.
Okay.
It'd probably be a pretty unusual circumstance, quite frankly. But there's a lot of tax work that's being done right now on how this trust and where it falls in all the tax categories and charitable organizations. Part of the control of the city council that's helpful in maintaining a tax status that's beneficial is the veto power that was put in there, and the appointment power of appointing the boards, things like that.
Very good.
And the trust, we didn't think it was going to end up necessarily set up this way originally, but as we were going through the charter amendment and the trust agreement, we worked with the Office of the Comptroller for the state of Tennessee, and they have oversight functions for local governments, and one of the things that they were looking for, which was actually more than what we expected, was that they wanted the trust to be operated as a constituent unit of the city. So for financial reporting purposes and audit, it will be part of those larger financial reporting purposes. And so it'll be, I think the term is unified audit.
Yeah.
Which also makes it easier for the city to, at least as the trust is getting up off the ground, to loan employees to serve various functions.
Do the legwork.
Yeah.
So in the grant process where it has like education and youth services, where it's broken out, there wouldn't be, we would be embellishing, like, this would not be like the schools would be applying for grants at all. This would be, give an example of an education.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't think they'd apply, the schools themselves wouldn't apply for a grant for the general operating expenses that they have. Those are covered. But they might have a program that's run through the schools. They might come in and say, we want to do, I'll make something up, after-school program for something like this, and it needs to be funded for a staff person. And so they may come in and make a grant application, but they would be like any other grant request.
Right, so it'd be over and above what is part of the.
Yeah, the city schools funding and operation, which is mostly by the state. The city does contribute some to that, but this part is charitable contribution, so that would be, it'd have to be a separate charitable kind of thing that they're doing as a program or something, like they're just using the education facilities and staffing to handle.
I would think it most likely fall into a category of a private charitable program organization that was serving.
We Care, That Care, Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Project Transformation, the reading program.
Yes.
That's a 501c3.
That's a good one, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Bylaws and policies?
Okay, the board, under the trust agreement, has adopted bylaws. Happy to go through those. They're kind of pretty much standard operating bylaws. There's nothing in there that's really a lot of, that's very different than any other committee you probably served on. I would describe them as pretty plain vanilla. But, we have a committee chair, which we just elected, and vacancies, how they get filled. It takes a majority majority vote from the committee to enact something or to make a recommendation. Quorum is a majority, so if people can't make a meeting, but we can still get four or more to meet, we can still meet. Everybody's busy and will have different things that'll come up. You can do regular meetings, special meetings, and then it talks about how recommendations will be made through the chair to the board. Any questions on those? Nothing surprising in there, I don't think.
Craig, what do you anticipate regular meeting schedule will be? I know that may be as determined, but you have a vision for that, or what you think it will look like?
Well, the board can adopt a regular schedule of meetings. I would think in the beginning, while we're developing the processes, the submittal process and review process, the board might want to meet on a regular basis just to establish the processes. And then after that, in future years, we'll probably take some time to get things put together right off the bat. But in future years, likely there'd be a period of time where you'll accept applications, and the board there's probably not a lot for the board to do and meet while that 60, 90 days is going on, unless you want to get together. And then meet a little more regularly after that. So I would anticipate the board probably would want, right off the bat, to maybe do monthly meetings. And if there's a period in there where we've accomplished things, then regular meetings can always be canceled. So if the board met and they said, all right, this is going to take 2 months, let's cancel the next meeting, and then we'll meet 2 months from there. That's not a problem. Special meetings usually arise when there's something that really needs to be done right off the bat. And so you call the chair will call a special meeting and have everybody get together and take care of whatever needs to be addressed at that time. So those are generally what a special meeting is.
And I assume we would structure that as far as the application process to where it comes in at certain periods, where it aligns with what.
Yeah, there may be some adjustment. The board will have to accept the applications. They'll have a period of time they want to review them. They want to probably maybe have them, some applicants come in and present, perhaps one or more applicants present, and then make a decision on their recommendation. And all that has to be done, somewhere in January. So that's going to be the busiest month. Some of that can be taken care of, obviously, beforehand. But we won't know the number for sure until January. And then January is where probably the decision will be made somewhere in there so that that February 15th date can be hit.
All right, review of the trust funding.
Let's see. Well, there was a couple other policies that I'll just mention before we jump to that. The board adopted 3 policies. There'll be more policies that they'll adopt just from an operational standpoint, but they've adopted 3 policies that are very important from a nonprofit standpoint, making sure that the Nonprofit Act operates within the IRS rules and other oversight. Whistleblower policy, a document retention policy, and a conflict of interest policies. Those are all very important to any nonprofit that's served. They're pretty much what you would expect. I mean, whistleblower policy, somebody comes in and says something to the chair or a board member, a staff person, no retaliation, they're protected. Conflict of interest, nobody should have any personal interest in a charitable organization that we're given, and we can get into further definitions if that looks like it's ever going to arise. The best thing on a conflict of interest is if you think that you might be, your decision might be colored one way or the other, or perceived to be colored one way or the other, someone could raise an issue, then it's always good just to come and talk to staff, talk to legal counsel, just get an idea of whether it's a good idea just to step back on that decision and let the board take care of it and then not have the conflict of interest. And the last thing is document retention, and usually staff takes care of that, but we want to make sure that documents are maintained for a period of time. So those are the 3 basic policies that the board went ahead and adopted that will apply to the committee right now. And if there's any others, we'll bring to the committee and let you know. Any questions on those? All right. So, trust funding, I think, you said would be next. Current status of funds, they're still held by the city. We're working through some issues on, We're getting some answers from a tax standpoint before we can transfer the funds. So that's in process right now. So the city still holds the funds set aside. The amount that will come to the trust is about a little bit less than $41 million right now is the balance that's being held. So once they get transferred, it'll be transferred into their accounts, and it'll start accruing earnings to the benefit of the trust. We're hoping that happens in the next few weeks. I hope we can get an answer on tax questions that are.
So that those funds haven't actually been invested by the board to this date?
Not yet.
But that's going to happen soon?
Right. Yeah, it's going to happen. What we need to do, before we can switch the investments, we really need to get a tax ID number and we want to get the tax ID number in the right way so that the board doesn't have tax issues in the future. So that's what's being tackled now. It's a little bit of an unusual situation that we created, so we're working through those issues. That's the status right now, and the current balance, as I mentioned, is about $41 million. So, Lyle, you mentioned, the charitable contribution would be somewhere around 250, 280, somewhere in there. depending
You
on-
got 278, 963 on page 6.
Yeah, that assumes some earnings that, and I'm not, let's see, that assumes some earnings in there that may not be actually being accrued right now, but
Okay.
round numbers, somewhere around in there. Yeah. And what's the contributions, the charitable contributions aspect of the trust really comes from the notion that council wanted the trust funds to take over what we call our strategic partners right now. So we fund some organizations. And what's the level of funding do we have set aside the governmental?
Setting aside the governmental, roughly 280,000.
Yeah. So it's really shifting over from what council would do in the past for some charitable organizations to the board, so that they would take over and then make those decisions on who should be funded out of the charitable contributions. Because it starts at 280, but as you can see, on the projections, it starts to really add up after a while, so it can be a lot more that's being done out of the trust. And that's a little different than with the city budget, because the city budget pretty much, and Ronnie knows he's been there, each year it would pretty much be the same and kind of roll forward, and it wasn't being, built up and increased because it's a zero-sum game. There's only so much money and it has to be divided. So this is a little bit different. It's really built to fund more than what the city was funding. Same type of charitable organizations, but to a greater extent.
If by chance there are not enough charities that we approve to use the money, does it have to be used, or is it just going to roll?
It's a good question, because that's part of the tax issues that we want to take. So there are certain type of charitable organizations that are required to distribute a percentage, generally 5%, out of their balance. And that's an IRS requirement to maintain your nonprofit status. Depending on how this trust is characterized, and if it's characterized as a municipal component unit, which is what we're really looking for, then that 5% number doesn't matter. So the answer to your question is yes, it would. If it isn't distributed, then it could just re-roll back in and earn more, and the next year be distributed, to a greater extent. If we do get classified as a foundation, I won't bore you with all of it, as a non-operating foundation, if we get classified in that, then we'll have the 5% requirement that we'll have to find a place to contribute to it. Now, the city counts, so it could be used for other things that the city, could put out there, but it would have to have that 5% coming out every year. That's part of the work we're doing now.
Will the open meetings law apply?
Yes,
You said
it does.
open meetings law. So in other words, people are going to be coming here and presenting. It'll be very public about the conversation will be.
In the press.
Yeah. Good.
So looking at this attachment number 6, financial projections, and coming down the column under charitable contributions, if everything is as normal, and it won't be, but let's just say it is, we're looking at 278, like Lyle said, and then next year 345, and then 418, and then that's if we spend it all.
Right.
It goes to double zeros, and then we come back with 345 next year, and so on and so forth. So this is...
Builds up pretty quick.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So-
the trust gets funded at a pretty good rate for 15 years. After that, then the trust doesn't receive any outside funding anymore, and it starts to contract. But it takes if you do the projections, you do a reasonable rate of return, it takes a long time for that to happen. So, decades from now, the trust will become small enough to eventually
Be manageable year to year.
$10 million where it's, if it's $10 million in Corpus, it wraps up.
So my question is, on that number, that figure in this column, whatever that figure is, once that comes to this committee, it's this committee's money. The city can't step in and say, hey, wait a minute, $80,000 of that goes to Salvation Army, or we were going to,
No, the decisions are left to the committee to make
just
a recommendation.
hypothetically, so it is, once it comes to this committee, it's this committee's funds to deal with.
To make they make recommendations to the board. The board actually has to do the distribution because the board is the governing body of the trust. So the board.
But we're doing that work for them, so they don't have to.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so there can be two vetoes, the board and then city council.
Sure.
But to clarify, it's a veto, not a replacement, instead of Organization A
Right.
wanting to give it
The
to
council
Organization
is-
B. It's a thumbs up or thumbs down
Right.
to the organization that this committee.
It's a good thing for this committee.
And then it
Yes.
goes back to the board. The
Yeah.
board can decide from there what they want to do with it. They could send it back to the committee. They could say, okay, let's just fund the other ones at a higher rate. If there's some in there that makes sense, if asked for more money and they just couldn't get it because we had to divide it up or something. The board could still distribute that money to other charitable contributions or take further recommendations of the board on how to do that.
And wait, from a practical standpoint, no one on probably, and I'm just not speaking for anyone, I'm just speculating based on having sat in some of those roles, nobody would want to veto something that comes through this. Nobody would want to do that.
Right.
So unless it was perceived to be a very extreme circumstance, it's probably going to roll right through there. And, or someone would have some conversation with you prior to this to say, hey, we're concerned about this based on X, Y, and Z. So-
Yeah. So,
Flip side of that's what Collier said, we can probably count on having some attendance in these meetings, so to speak.
I think I read something. These were just based on like a 4% return. Was that what I saw?
Yeah.
So they could be actually way higher than these numbers.
Okay, so back,
But,
I mean, theoretically it could.
I hope it's not.
yeah, but you're right, yeah, it could be. Now, the board will hire a financial manager, and there are financial managers that just do foundations, which is basically the category we more or less fall into. And so, they do conservative rates of return because you don't want to put the money at risk too
Oh,
much.
it's going to be like 5%.
We use 4% over a long period of time, that's about what Chris used.
These are lowest end.
Very conservative.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the veto? Just say we bring something and the board says no, see, it's just a no-go. It just happened. Would that money that had been allocated for that charity roll back into the next year, or would be allowed to find another charity?
That would be up to the board, but it could fund another charity, it could fund a charity that the money's going to at a higher rate. It would go back to the council, whatever it was done, unless it was already a charitable contribution that.
So that's going to fall under the timing part of all this.
Yeah, it'll fall a little bit under the timing part of it. The timing part of it, the most critical thing, February the 15th, frankly, has to do more with the funds that will go to the city, so we can incorporate that into budgets as we work through our budget that we have to get done by May timeframe. So if it went to the council on, say, the 1st of March sometime, and council vetoed it, and it came back, those decisions can kind of be made, because that's not coming into the city's budget. Those decisions can be made on a longer time frame. So they can be worked with. In other words, we can work out whatever needs to be done to make it make sense. They'd have to be pretty extreme. I mean, if the committee decides that they want to build a multi-story Taj Mahal building for the committee meetings, they probably would get vetoed. But short of that, you're going to.
Which brings me to my next question, brick and mortar and/or everything, anything for these contributions?
As long as they fit in there. The requirements are that they be the traditional type of charitable organization that the cities contribute to in the past. So they assist the community. They're kind of along the lines of what we've done in the past. And then there are some restrictions on how much any one type of charity can get, or There's also additional contributions, so the math may be a little tricky as you get through it, that some of it has to be divided up between the three categories, which I forgot. One was education and one was,
One is victim and community safe, victim services and community safety, and one's health related. And if you want to go like to the 30,000-foot view, the charter sets forth purposes of the trust. And I'll just read them real quickly here. They're to support projects and programs of the city or other nonprofit institutions that benefit the city's inhabitants and improve or enhance the quality of life of the city's inhabitants, or aid civic or other public improvements. Promote and advance the social welfare of the inhabitants of the city. Promote and support educational and recreational programs, facilities, and opportunities within the city. Promote and support economic development and employment opportunities within the city. This last one's probably more towards money that would go to the city directly to fund public works within or benefiting the city and to advance the general welfare of the city and its residents. So there's a pretty broad scope there. And you could get applications from a wide variety of organizations providing a wide range of services and programs to the community.
I think to your question, Wade, I think a big part of this is designed to help prevent some of those things from eating up a large portion of that.
Chunk of that, yeah.
Because, for example, if you got $1 million and 20% is the maximum, which is the biggest number we have for education and youth services, well, let's say that's $200,000. It's unlikely that we're only going to have one applicant under that, and it's unlikely that we would do all $200,000 for one applicant. So there's some structure built in there to prevent $1 million request for, sticks and bricks somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it just wouldn't fit. So, and I think based on what the council said originally, was really not the design, the capital sourcing was not designed for this. It was ongoing operating needs or special things that would come up. But if that helps.
Operating funds, yeah.
Yeah.
So Adam, you brought up the city is currently spending roughly $280,000 on charitable organizations as a contribution from the city budget.
I don't know. I didn't say that. I don't know if that's.
Jackson said that.
I didn't quote that number, but I don't know what it is. But the city currently is funding a certain number of charitable organizations through its annual budget.
Okay. And that's going to come out next year because of us, because of this committee.
In large part, yes.
Okay.
Does the city, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Could we get, for last fiscal year, what was spent on the various organizations for our reference, maybe?
we'll do another round from the city on this year's budget. And so you'll have that information as to who was funded and when. So I said we call them strategic partners. There's two sets of those. So we have some what we call governmental related. So we fund the library, we fund the Chamber of Commerce, which does workforce development, economic development for us. So there's a few of those that really the city will keep, and they'll continue to fund those type of things. And then there's the charitable contributions, and those are the ones we fund as well. I mean, we fund PAWS because they do animal control that we don't want to do. So there's some things that we'll keep, and some things that will.
Does the city have a criteria on these donations that we're already making to these organizations that say, okay, no more than 50% is used for operating and the rest is going towards, do we have any kind of number that would vet a lot of charities that may come to us and you instantly vet them and they don't qualify?
Those are good requirements, and I don't know, Angela.
Not that specific example.
Come to the microphone. We're recording, so we're going to ask her to step up here so we can hear her nice and clear on the recording, because she loves to do this
I
anyway.
do, it's my favorite thing. So with the city's current strategic partnership piece, and I'd be happy to just share that with the group. I can share that example, Mr. Lynch, that you had asked for before of the current pieces. Some of those council communications that we've done in the past have summarized all of those very well. A lot of them are very traditional, I would say, like the same organizations at some pretty flat amounts as we have transitioned from what we did in the past as outside agencies to where we currently are with strategic partnerships. And we've been working with those nonprofits that have received that funding in the past so that they're prepared, hopefully, for this next transition, which is expected to be more competitive. So as far as some of the criteria that you were using as the example, I'd be glad to answer anything specific, but they're out of that, most agencies are receiving anywhere from $2,500 up to $25,000, but it is a lot of agencies receiving a small amount, more than some of these big gifts that I think this group is looking to potentially be able to do.
About how many agencies are you doing right now?
Between 30 and 35.
Okay. And let me ask you this, this is another question, Rutherford County out, is it all just city? Like, does Paul service Rutherford County? Or just
They service Rutherford County.
But we could give, because it is in the city, or do we include some Rutherford County?
Yeah, I don't think there has to be a real bright line that they only have to operate within the city. And we fund a lot of organizations. We fund,
Child Advocacy Center, for example.
Child Advocacy Center. They operate for the entire county, and we provide quite a bit of funding for them. So I don't think it's restricted generally, but they would probably have to operate here. We probably wouldn't fund something that just operates up in Laverne and not have any connection to Murfreesboro.
That services all around here.
Correct.
Might get a veto on that one.
Veto.
So you're saying that an organization does not have to be headquartered in Murfreesboro, but must benefit it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're providing services here, yeah.
Operational plan.
So, yeah, from a timing standpoint, we touched on it a little bit. It'll take a little while for the committee to put together all the processes that we'll need in making its decision. So, what I just mentioned is the city will do another round of strategic partnership funding in the next budget. We operate from July 1st to June 30th. So we're starting the budget process now. We'll be well into the budget process before we meet once or twice more. So there won't really be time to put together what the committee will need to do and who they'll need to fund until the next budget year. So that's what we'll be looking for is the next budget year from a timeline standpoint. In the development and review process and developing those, like I said, Angela and Karen can help with putting together those. I think, and I'm trying to remember, Angela mentioned something about there's an online program that might be very beneficial that do we use or we're looking at using, or?
Is it GuideStar?
Well, GuideStar will give information about it. Now, this is a grant application submittal system.
Karen's been doing some research. We'd reached out to Ann Davis to find out which one that Christy Houston was using. Ann had said that she was very happy with that. I believe that was Found It. That does, of course, come at a cost, a subscription cost, so we'll do some more research and try to make a recommendation back to the group. It does provide you with that opportunity to review more individually rather than having to come in and sit around one piece of the documents there.
What's it called?
Found It. I was trying to make it a cake. Right. But we can look at that and others we've used. I mean, I think there's several out there that we could look at.
So good point. They generally have a subscription, so there'll be a cost involved. So the Board of Trustees will put together an operating budget for operating the trust and the costs that are involved. So when the committee, as it forms its processes, if they see any costs, if there's consultants, if there's different things like that that need to be subscription services or anything like that, that'll need to go back to the board, be incorporated into their budget. And that's where the money will come from, because the calculation that's done every year will take costs out of the 5% that's taken out of the trust, and then the money will be divided after that. So there is a provision in there that allows for operating costs to be handled.
When you're talking about operating costs, no portion of anyone's salary at this point will be from this foundation.
Of the city staff?
Yes.
Eventually, well, that's a discussion we'll have to have with the board. You know, likely there'll be some allocation to the city time to put together the trust. The board can hire its own administrative staff at some point, but they got to get approval from the city council. And that's because a lot of the funding that comes out of it goes back to the city. So obviously the city needs to have that say over that. But well, we kind of see that as when we set up the trust, we knew that the city would provide administrative support going forward for a period of time. And at some point, you know, the trust may say, okay, we're going to need to hire a small staff, because it's not an operating foundation, so it's not going to be doing things every single day. But they'll hire some staff time if they want to. If the city staff can't handle it, or it becomes too burdensome for city staff to do this on a regular basis, that they can hire their own staff.
But like the software package, that would come out of the trust,
The operating expenses.
operates from the trust, and we would still get the 5% of,
It comes at, well.
would come out of the contribution amount.
Yeah, if you follow on the sheets there, the operating is, they do the calculations, they take the distribution of 5%, cover costs, well, I'm not reading them.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at numbers here, but they'll do the calculations, take the 5% out of that, they take costs out of that 5%, and then 85% will go to the city and 15% will come to the trust. That's part of the calculations that we've done in here, the operating. There's fees and expenses were estimated they start at $200,000 and from there. That's baked into these numbers, in other words. And that's a wild swing at the end, because we don't know subscription fees for software and things like that. We don't have the insight into that just yet.
Timing of recommendations, what is that?
Yeah, that's what we talked about. The timing, we'll probably be looking at for recommendations by February of '24. By the time processes get set up, applications get submitted, the board reviews and is able to make recommendations to the board. It'd probably be next.
So I was a one-year termer on the boat when it got, so I'm out at that point, or when does my 1 year start? Today? You're next.
Right, the short, you'll probably get reappointed, unless
I screw it up.
Just sit right there, you'll be fine.
You're so lucky.
You'll keep getting reappointed.
Oh, okay.
So, just hang on. Yeah, the appointments, the staggered on the appointments was really to create a staggered rollover time. So
I really didn't know when it started and stopped. That's when it started and stopped. If it starts today, then it's...
probably this is the first meeting, yeah, and then, so a year from now, so you'll make the February 15th, and then
Okay.
that'll be your swan song, I guess.
There you go. And then the grant application development process. all that.
So we'll put together, like I said, Angela and Karen can put together, maybe next meeting, we can start to see a little bit about how the processes are done and what you see. And maybe we'll have some research done on what it looks like, and we can pull up, if they let us, the software to see what it looks like.
Future meeting dates.
Meeting dates, so.
Something about monthly for now, or?
We can do that if council wants, or council, if the committee wants to set a regular meeting, we can talk about what might work for everybody on a regular meeting date. And then we can maybe set that on monthly, and then we can go from there. If there is a month where people can't get together enough to have a quorum, or if not a lot's happening, then we can always cancel a regular meeting until the next month.
Tuesday's good for everybody.
I like Mondays.
Mondays are not good for me. The second and fourth Tuesdays are the best days for me.
Fourth Tuesdays would
Fourth
be good.
Tuesday of each month.
Tuesdays are good for me.
Not good for me, unless we do it in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, or this time is okay, but.
That's generally when,
You think usually we'll be here an hour or more?
I run fast meetings at my office.
Got it, good. I like it.
Well, I have to say, I'd hate to miss the second meeting, which maybe I'm the only one impacted here, but that is spring break. I'm not the only one impacted, Mr. Chairman.
I'm doing auctions during.
Do you think every other month would be better?
Not starting out.
it's
Give
fine
us
with me, yeah, we could,
guidance, I don't know, I mean.
there'll be longer meetings, but we'll just cover more.
Maybe as we get closer to the February or the
Yes.
the thing, we probably will need to meet more often, but for now, it's, you know.
If we met in April, the fourth Tuesday in April, that would give staff time to put together some information on what applications look like, and
Yeah, April 24th.
April 26th.
25th.
4th.
25th.
3 o'clock, all
I
right?
mean, 25th, I'm sorry, 25th.
Is 3 o'clock okay with everybody? or-
Well, that's fine with me.
Me too.
3.
Then
Good
that
for you,
clears my.
Carter?
Yes.
April 25th at 3 PM.
And thereafter, we'll look at the fourth Tuesday of each month.
What'd you say?
And we can
Till
talk
3 to
about it.
3:15.
I think you're going to have to stay on over a year.
Oh, we'll see. Okay. Recommended topics.
Anything for the next meeting, I think we'll probably want to cover applications for grant applications. Just give a preliminary overview of that.
We would probably review the review process, because obviously we're looking at online process now, but somewhere in there, we should probably, one of us make a visit to the organization possibly, and that's something to discuss.
That's a good idea. But since I greatly appreciate being appointed to this, but I put a lot of thought into some things, and I hunt with a gentleman that runs a nonprofit in Nashville, Dave Lipscomb. He wears that David Lipscomb, and so I just peppered him with a lot of questions while we were hunting and stuff, and that GuideStar came up, and we talked about the operating cost and how much really goes to the actual charity, and how much is eaten up in fees and cost and overhead and that stuff. So I do think that is possibly a good way to vet some of them, so that we just instantly, that's not going to work. As soon as we look at their GuideStar or whatever that we use, and we look at their $9.99 or whatever it is that they file, and see what that number is, and it would instantly eliminate maybe a lot of people that we're not even going to pass anyway.
Yeah, I think part of the application process is require financial information so we can take a look at it, because, not every organization will file the 990s. They have math to do, but they should be able to provide financial, so you know that you're not spending all the money on office staff and hiring people and doing all that, and then the small percentage goes out to benefit.
I think that's important for our city.
The other thing that we've talked a lot about is measurement of the productivity and making sure that if they come in and they say, we want the money, we want to do this with it, is that they come in also and say, and this is how we're going to measure it. And this is, when we come back and if we ask for it next year, we'll be able to show you that we've had some results or we've made some progress towards whatever the goal is that we want. So having that as the application process, we started doing that, how long ago? 4 years ago. And that's a real beneficial process, part of the process as well.
Anything else? Any other business? 1 hour.
Good, quick meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Did we drop the hammer?
So,
Is that all we need to do?
I think that's all we need to do for now. Yes, absolutely. We have, you have with you contact information.
It's all on here.
Mine's not.
Where to find us.
Have a drink and talk about this.
Don't hesitate to follow up any questions, any thoughts.
I don't know what else to do. Sure.
I'll be contacting to get the next agenda together and things like that. We'll all that together, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody the 24th of April.
All right, meeting adjourned.